Hey, it's Mike, Blackstone Valley Piano and Organ here. Okay, one of our specialties is to build up the sides of keys to compensate for a few different things. This particular keyboard, we had to build up the sides because the last person that covered the keys over-trimmed the keys significantly. You can see how much they over-trimmed them. Okay, that doesn't look like a lot of material, but it's about a 32nd of an inch. And when you consider that the original spacing on a keyboard is only about 45 to 50 thousandths, as on this piano, well, then you can imagine what these keys looked like before I added that wood on there. So, one reason to build out or build up, depending on how you want to look at it, the sides of the keys is from over trimming. This is the most common reason we build out and repair the key sticks. This happens to be another case we built up or built out the sides of the keys. This is one of the rarer cases where this keyboard is a teaching instrument, and essentially just the portion underneath the key top got eroded away from people's fingernails over the years, and there was actually very deep holes and craters in there, so we had to machine that wood out and put new wood on there. Now, this piano had the original tops on it, so as you can see, the original spacing is beautiful. Other than that material that we removed, the spacing hasn't been changed. Like in this case, where the whole side of the key was just over sanded and poorly trimmed. This keyboard, it's not the case. The original spacing is beautiful. So we added those shims or inserts, whatever you want to call them, to all the keys. Now, this particular keyboard is in for building up of the sides of the keys as well, but as you can see, this is another victim of serious over trimming. You can see that there. Look how far someone gouged into that key. Okay, and it's on every key. There's a lot of people in this country recovering keys and just doing a really bang up job. They over sand, they over trim. We can talk about trimming for a second. This is a key top. This is a key stick. So when you put a new key top on, you want to trim just the key top, not the key stick. If the key stick is being trimmed, then that means whatever method someone's using to trim the key top is not well thought out, because it doesn't have a safety measure in it to prevent that person from trimming the key stick. You only want to trim the key top. Enough said. This is another keyboard that we're doing right now, and if you notice, someone has added a piece of wood to the front of every key. Now, initially when it came in, I saw a couple of them that looked like they had been repaired, and I initially just thought it was a mortise repair, because sometimes when keys are made, they mortise from the bottom and they go all the way through the key, so they have to put this little mortise insert in. So basically I thought maybe some of those popped out and they just put a piece of wood on there. But upon closer inspection, if you look, they put those pieces of wood on there and hung them over the sides a tiny bit, about 15 thousandths or so on each side, solely to tighten up the spacing. Basically, the tighter the spacing on a keyboard, it just really looks good. But in this method, they cheated, because they only hung it over about 1/8 of an inch on the top of the key, so that can be felt. You can feel that overhang. And they only did it on the front portion, so that, as you can see, the rest of the key doesn't have that. So you'll feel an overhang of the plastic there, and there isn't the wood following it all the way down. So it's actually cheating. If you want to tighten up the spacing really nice, you can do this method. You can put the wood all the way down. That way when I put the plastic on here, you know, when I add a sheet of plastic like this, okay, what I'll do is I'll trim the top and the key stick down at the same time. That's the only time you actually want to trim the key stick when you're trimming the top, is when you have the key built out bigger than it needs to be. You put the top on and you trim them both together, and then you take it individually, key by key, and then you space the keyboard going down the keyboard, one key at a time. And you set that spacing so you're trimming the top and the key stick at the same time. Unlike this case, where they just, you know, went crazy with what appears to be by the lines I see that are vertical. It's usually people doing this job quickly and cheaply usually just use a 1-inch belt sander. They don't have any method of controlling what they're doing. So again, this is a poor example, or a good example, of trimming the key stick with the key top. And that's what causes all these huge gaps between the keys. Now this material is naturally shrinking and contracting, but there's huge spaces between these keys because they were just over trimmed so badly. So one method of building out the side of the keys, kind of in a cheating, phony way, because again it only overhangs the top, you know, 1/8 inch of the key stick plus the thickness of the key top itself. This is a very effective way, covers the whole side, and then you can trim back that material and essentially space the keyboard to however you want it. I'll space this one probably around 45 thousandths of an inch, which is basically going to match something like that. Again, this keyboard was fitted with these inserts simply because of erosion from playing. You'll also notice that I've already spaced and squared and traveled all the keys. So I'll cover them and then trim them back to within a few thousandths of the original key stick, because again, I don't want to trim the key stick. This material I put on actually overhangs, you know, probably about 10 thousandths or so. And what I'll do again is I'll just trim that lightly back and stay away from trimming the key stick. The piano over here that has that funny built up portion from someone else, you can see what I'll do is the same thing. I'll put a top on and then I'll trim this stuff back to within a few thousandths of the key stick, because this is an original factory spacing too, and it's perfectly acceptable. It's actually exactly what the spacing should be for this particular piano.